Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to 5 Reasons Why You Shouldn't Harm Your Loved Ones During Quarantine. I am happy to say that even though it's getting a little chillier outside, it's still really nice to get some fresh air. Today we're going to talk about some of the new crimes that have erupted because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to talk about social media. We'll talk about some of the impact of sexting and texting and some changes in that area as we continue to stay home and hope that our kids are hanging in there. It's astounding that 8 weeks ago, the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in Michigan. 8 weeks. It's kind of crazy. Happy Cinco de Mayo, by the way. And we've been following these guidelines and there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of disagreement as to the measures that have been taken. But as of today, the measures are working, but there's still probably a pretty long way to go. One of the things that opened up yesterday during the governor's press conference is that back in March 27th, non-essential health and dental care was not permitted, and now it's at the discretion of the providers. If they believe that someone needs that type of medical or dental treatment, they have authority to give it. Of course, with social distancing and PPE, all of those things in place. As of yesterday at 3 o'clock, there are 4,135 deaths in Michigan and 43,950 cases of COVID-19. We have seen a shift in the hotbed, where still Detroit, Wayne County, Oakland County, Macomb County have the highest numbers. We have areas in western Michigan and northern Michigan where their number of cases are going up as opposed to stabilizing as we're seeing in the Metro Detroit area. So other things that happened is there was a directive that this should not be read into, but they have put limitations on beef, pork, and poultry to the number that a person can buy at Costco or at Kroger to 3 items per person. They don't want to see panic buying, and there not being enough food supply for everyone in our state. So that was kind of interesting. Really what I thought was most interesting was an article this morning in the New York Times, and that talked about how New York City has more cases than any other city or country in the world. And that they are now past their plateau and they are able to, they're managing. And it was discussed with other leaders in other countries that the reason that New York has been successful in its efforts so far is because they followed the models of other countries. They followed Italy, they followed Spain, and some of the other really hard-hit countries with the measures that they took. And they had enough supplies from other states and from the federal government when they got to crisis that they were able to get through it in an efficient manner. Certainly, they didn't have anyone calling Governor Cuomo that man from New York. The article talks about how the reason that the country has not been as successful as New York City is because the country has been dealt with in a very haphazard way. And if you go through, and if you go read the article is pretty fascinating, but if you kind of go through and see how the federal government, felt that it needed to keep its stockpile, but the states should dig into their stockpiles. And there was kind of this tug of war about which states need stuff the most. And Michigan still needs stuff from the federal government. And now we have this situation where Trump is still sparring with Whitmer, and we have a situation where she has taken action to make accountability standards for all the money that is coming into Michigan and to guarantee that it is being used to fight the pandemic. She created the Michigan Office of Accountability, which is a COVID-19 oversight office that is, she appointed an interim director, but has asked the technology committee to nominate someone to be permanent in that position, and their sole job is to audit the dollars spent on fighting COVID-19, and so it's totally transparent. She has requested from the federal government aid in securing more swabs and reagents to process the tests. We now have numerous tests, but we are still low on supplies. And she'll have another press conference either Wednesday or Friday, and she'll announce what's going to open next. Now going to today's topic, which is a little bit of an overlap. I want to talk a little bit about teens and social media and the impact that this is having and the crimes that they could be committing without even knowing they're committing them. And I also want to talk about a whole bunch of crimes that now are going to exist because of COVID-19. So the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime has put out a warning about falsified medical products. There's websites that are advertising vaccines, testing kits, home testing kits, medicines that they're saying that they're approved for treating COVID, when actually they are fraudulent and they have too little of the active ingredients or too much of the active ingredients. Some of them have been found to have arsenic, rat poison, or cement in them. And so this is really, really dangerous stuff that is being sold on the internet as to what has been called a desperate community, a desperate society, who everybody wants to get better if they're sick. Everybody wants to survive this. So there's a warning from the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime that this is an organized crime. These drugs are being trafficked just like other illegal or illicit drugs, and they really are taking advantage of our most desperate citizens. So that's one thing to watch out for. Another thing that has been identified is there are groups out there who are have websites or are using phone calls to solicit business owners to fill out a PPP, which is the Small Business Paycheck Protection loan, or the SBA, which is the Small Business Loan. And they're sort of these fake websites or fake people holding themselves out as, that they're calling to speed up the process and, just fill out this addendum where they get all your personal information. And then it turns out that they're fraud and they're going to use your personal information for either, getting credit cards or applying for other loans, and identity theft, all different kinds of fraud. And so that's something to be weary of out there. So now going to social media, and I chose this today because for those of you that don't know, there's a social media app called TikTok, TikTok. I'm saying TikTok. And TikTok is a place where you can post videos, and you don't necessarily have to have an account. There's no you can be my friend or you can be my follower, and you need to be approved by the person whose account it is. Really, anyone can put something up there and anyone can watch it. And there was a group out of Charleston, West Virginia, that posted a TikTok video that went viral. And if you don't know what that means, you should ask your kids, but it means that thousands and thousands of people have watched it. And it basically is a dare, and it's telling the young people, go and, put your tongue on a public doorknob, or put your, or on a grocery cart. And they are, they're just doing this in different public places in an effort to get the virus. Not really understanding how dangerous it is and that they're potentially spreading the virus. It mentions that, the response mentions that this coronavirus challenge, it is going across the country, and because of it, this Dr. Sherry Young, who has really been verbal and opinionated about monitoring your kids' social media during this time. She says that the research says that coronavirus has been found to live in the air for up to 3 hours on cleaned surfaces, like the counter with Clorox wipes and all that, for up to 3 days. And it can be alive on an uncleaned surface for more than 2 weeks after an infected person had contact, if that hasn't been cleaned. And she goes into talking about how to make sure you wipe off your grocery cart before you go in the grocery, even if you're wearing gloves. As far as social media statistics, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how widespread social media is with teens, and especially now that they are not able to see their friends in person, and this is their connection other than playing video games where they're live with their friends. But basically 88% of teens have seen someone bullied or being mean or cruel to another person on a social network site. The number of sexual assault cases related to social media has increased by 300%. 12% of teens say they've witnessed unpleasant behavior frequently on social media or social networking sites. 55% of parents of 12-year-olds said their child was on Facebook, and 76% said they helped their children access it. Remember, there's an age on Facebook that you have to be to have an account, and it's 13. So we're talking about kids under 13. 22% of teens lost their friendship with someone due to actions on social media. 25% of teens experienced a face-to-face argument or confrontation as a result of a post on Facebook. 62% of parents of teens aged 13 and 14 are friends with their child. 62% of parents of teens 13 and 14 are friends with their children on Facebook. 29% of internet sex crime relationships were initiated on social networking sites. 67% of teenagers say they know how to hide what they do online from their parents. 55% of teens have given out personal information to someone they don't know on social networking sites. 64%, let me say that again, 64% of teens have uploaded photos to social media sites. And 42% of teens are creating characters, avatars, anime, memes to express themselves across their personal profiles. 33% of all internet-initiated sex crimes involve social networking sites. Half, 50%, of all sex crimes against a minor involving a social networking site, the social networking site was used to initiate the relationship. 81% of online 9 to 17-year-olds say they visited a social networking website within the past 3 months. Cases of internet sex crimes against children involving social networking sites were more likely to result in a face-to-face meeting. This was true of 81% of the internet-initiated crimes involving a social networking site. More than 25% of Facebook users last year were under 10. Only 10% of children aged 10 and under had ever had a talk about appropriate online behavior with their children. Of the active adult users of Facebook, this is another scary one, 66% did not know there were privacy controls. 29% have been stalked or contacted by a stranger or someone they didn't know on Facebook. 67% of teenagers say they know how to hide what they do online, not just on social networking sites, from their parents. Here's a few more dingers for you. 43% of teenagers said they would change their online behavior if they knew their parents were watching them. 39% of tweens and teens think their online activity is private from everyone, including their parents. 20% of kids think their parents have no idea what they're doing. 85% of parents of teenage children aged 13 to 17 report that the child has a social networking profile, and 22% of teenagers log on to their favorite social media site more than 10 times a day. So that's all a little scary. So let's talk a little bit about how that can become criminal. We already talked about the TikTok example, and obviously that, encouraging people, daring people to spread a virus is a danger to the public health, and it is illegal. In addition, it would fall under the category of violation of the stay-at-home order and some of the other executive orders that have been put in place for our safety during this pandemic. So looking at sexting for a minute. Sexting has been defined, although it's different it's different a little bit in each state, but it's generally regarded as any act of digitally sending or sharing a sexually explicit image and or text. It can occur by any means of electronic transfer. It doesn't have to be a text. It could be email, it could be Instagram, it could be direct messages, it could be TikTok, it could be Snapchat, it could be Kik, it could be, there's a new one every day. If it involves minors, it is illegal. If it is a sexually suggestive image of a minor, then it violates the federal law as well as the state law. In Michigan, you have to be 18 in order to consent to being in a sexually suggestive image of yourself. It is a strict liability crime, and once someone takes an image even of themselves, if they are under 18, having it on their phone is possession, and it's illegal. If they send it to someone, then they have now distributed it. By taking the picture in the first place, they have manufactured it. And these images are child pornography. They are child abusive material. And there is not a separate statute for sexting in Michigan. It has very strict penalties, and as I mentioned earlier, possession is considered a strict liability crime. It's assumed that if you accepted an image and put it on your phone, or you took an image and put it on your phone, that you knew what you were doing. Consent can be a defense to the sending or receiving, but only if it's two adults. That means two people over 18. If there was consent to take the picture or to have the picture, but not to distribute the picture, it could be a possible defense for adults, but it's really, really hard to win or defend on that basis. Especially now when our young people and our children are feeling lonely and detached, it's really important to have the discussion about the dangers of sending images, nude images, the side boob, whatever it is, because they can get in a lot of trouble. Parents need to be proactive, and it's never too late to open the conversation and to check in and make sure that your child's doing okay and they're not acting out in this manner or feeling pressured from others to act out in this way. They seem to be particularly socially vulnerable right now because of the stay-at-home order. In Michigan, as I said, this falls under our child sexually abusive activity or material statute, which is Michigan Compiled Laws 750.145C, if you want to Google it and read it. And it basically defines all the terms, who's a child, what's access, what's possession, what's a listed sexual act, what is, erotic fondling, and passive sexual involvement. It defines all of these things, as well as prurient interest, which means shameful or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion. Child sexually abusive material is defined as any depiction, whether made or produced by electronic, mechanical, or other means, including a developed or undeveloped photograph, picture, film, slide, video, electronic visual image, computer, diskette, computer or computer-generated image or picture, or sound recording, which is of a child or appears to include a child engaging in a listed sexual act. And then it goes on about a book, a magazine, a computer, a phone, a storage device, print medium, photograph, picture. It just goes on and on and on. And there's a lot of definitions in this statute, which clearly the little sexting and changing and sending of nudes would fall into if you are a minor. There is a lawsuit that has been filed in Wisconsin, in Marquette County, which is outside of Milwaukee, that based on a Marquette County sheriff threatening to arrest a teen and her parents if she didn't delete posts on social media that were deemed inappropriate and a danger to the public health. Basically, she had posted that she had COVID-19, and it was not true. And there has been all kinds of commentary as to the battle between her First Amendment rights and if the government could force that to be taken down. So if you want to read more about that, you can find that at www.courthousenews.com /WP-content uploads 2020-04 /WIS-Instagram.pdf, or just Google Wisconsin lawsuit COVID-19 social media, and you'll get it that way. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about the social media aspects, other than you may want to remind your children when you have the discussion with them that if you wouldn't post it on a billboard for the whole world to see, you probably shouldn't post it on your own social media. You have no control over what happens to it after it leaves your computer, meaning you make it, you send it out there, or you keep it on your phone or on your computer. You really have no control once another person has eyes on it, hands on it, whatever it is. A lot of what we see is that, teens, the boyfriend asks for a nude, maybe the girlfriend asks for a nude, whatever, but the minute they break up, they send them to the whole world. We see cases where they take, this is a form of cyberbullying, where they take, I'm just using a female analogy because it usually is, but someone will take a friend's face and put it on a nude body and circulate it as a way of cyberbullying. I guess they're not really their friend. I shouldn't have called them that. But it is illegal if you are an adult in possession of child porn, any young individual under 18 in the image, then that is a 20-year felony. And as I said earlier, anything that appears to be a sexual image can also be prosecuted federally as well, where the penalties are much, much harsher. So with that, unless anybody posts any questions right now, we will call it a day for today. I will remind you the 5 reasons not to harm your loved ones during quarantine are: number 1, protective services are essential workers; number 2, the police are essential workers; number 3, our jails and prisons and juvenile detention facilities, because those are way, way, way on the rise right now, are breeding grounds for COVID-19. There isn't the ability to properly quarantine, and there isn't the appropriate access to all the medical care that people have needed when they got it. Number 4, which I guess is what today's talk will fall into, is that kids being kids can get their parents in a lot of trouble. And number 5, very few people, if any, look good in horizontal stripes. So with that, I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Stay home, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.